Well, hello and welcome. This is episode number 19. I'm hoping I got that number right. I was just telling my guest here, Jessica, I keep saying it wrong for the last several times. Jessica, I'm so glad you're on here. And by the way, we're filming this right after Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day to
Oh, thank you.
you.
Yep.
Well, if we stop there, that would be good because we could celebrate moms. But we do have a lot to celebrate today, and we're going to talk about the whole idea of look, my glasses are all messed up here. We're going to talk about the whole idea of how important our mindset is. You know, it's interesting for me. Let me just say this, Jessica. It's interesting for me as a business coach. Sometimes I think, I wonder if people get the idea that all I'm doing is talking about mindset.
Important.
And then in the next thought, I'm like, no, wait, hold on. Mindset is everything.
Everything.
It is
Yes,
everything. So
absolutely. Yep.
so we need make no apologies for it. Now, obviously, we do get very specific about the hows and the details and the systems and the structures and all of those
Mhm.
things. But obviously, you are, well, people, if they're not aware, we're going to hear about your business in a bit, but you are doing personal training
Mhm.
and mostly with women. Am I correct
That's
about
right.
that? And we're
Yes.
going to hear all about your business, and we're going to make sure that people have a way to get connected with you and through your bio and through everywhere this recording goes out. But so talk to me a little bit about your own mindset journey. What for you as an entrepreneur, tell me a little bit about your experiences with mindset, and then I want to hear about how that translates into what you're doing with clients.
Sure. So, man, I have a long story. But just a kind of a backstory, about 7, 8 years ago, I went through some pretty hard times.
Mm-hmm.
I went through a really rough divorce,
Mm-hmm.
even a lost custody battle. So I was in a terrible negative mindset at the time. I was
Yes.
going through a lot of stuff. And at the time, I decided to actually get a life coach, which was the best thing
There you
that ever
go.
happened to
Yeah.
me. And so she encouraged me. We talked about some of my strengths, maybe some of the weaknesses to work on, but really more about the strengths that I have.
Yes.
And that for me was a huge mindset shift, looking at what I can bring to the table, what I have to offer people,
Mm-hmm.
instead of looking at what was wrong with me.
Oh, I love that.
So at the time, she encouraged me to use my strengths and my skills, and I decided to actually enroll again into college.
Mm-hmm.
And I am that was what 7 no that was 6 years ago. It's about
Mm-hmm.
6 years ago, and I am now about to finish up my master's in addictions counseling.
Oh, that's so great.
So just that one, well, a few times with her,
Mm-hmm.
just shifting that mindset
Yeah.
from what is wrong with me to what strengths do I have and what can I bring to the table? How can I make an impact?
Mm-hmm.
It just changed everything for me. And so now here I am coaching women, empowering women, and hopefully going into the counseling field as well to help in that arena.
I can only imagine how much that's going to be helpful to you, and I'm sure it's helpful every single day in anyone that you're
Sure.
working with. You know, I love that idea because so much of life is about perspective.
Absolutely. Yep.
And neurologically, where our attention goes, our energy flows, meaning that if we are focused on guilt, shame, blame,
Hmm.
those things actually pull the resources of our brain to survival mode.
Yep.
And we cannot thrive in survival mode. We are not going to thrive. And we weren't intended to live that way.
Right.
That all those capacities are for moments. They're not for a lifestyle.
Right.
And that little shift of saying, no, 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 focus on your resourcefulness,
Hmm.
focus on everything that you are bringing to the equation, that actually pulls all of your energetic resources to the best parts of you to actually go create what it is you want to create in your life. And
Absolutely.
and let me just say that is a lawful process. That is never going to change. and I don't care where you want to apply that. It is universally lawful, and therefore it can be universally applied.
Right.
So
Yep. It's all about changing. And really, it's what I kind of wanted to bring to the table today was to talk about those internal stories and that mindset that we have
yes,
about ourselves and how our self narrative is shaped over
yes,
the years, even from
mm-hmm,
childhood. As we all know, a lot of the things that happen during childhood
mm-hmm,
affects how we behave and how we think
mm,
today.
yeah,
And so I really had to work on just kind of deconstructing those
yes,
fixed ways of
mm-hmm,
thinking
mm-hmm,
and just kind of reconstructing a new reality for myself by looking for different perspectives. And that's what that life coach helped me to do, was recreate a new story for myself.
yes,
And that is absolutely what happened. I mean,
mm-hmm,
I've learned so much since then. But as humans, we tend to focus on the negative, like what
mm-hmm,
is wrong with us,
mm-hmm,
what aren't we doing right, and we focus on the events in our mind that endorse that belief.
yes,
We
yeah,
live out that belief,
yeah,
right?
and reinforce it. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yep.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about that, because I what you're sharing, I love this and share this all the time, but I want to hear how you put that. You were talking about the formulation of, really, it's our identity.
Mhm.
It's about who we are, and honestly, it's not actually who we are, and it's not necessarily who we think we are. Often it's who we think other
Think.
people think we are, who we believe other people
Right.
think we are. So, but I want to hear, so that formation. So
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit, and how all that, we're human, and there's a way and a reason why it all happens. But talk about
Mhm.
that process a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll actually give you a personal example of this.
Hmm.
And it has to do with, actually, I wouldn't be here today with you if I didn't change the narrative in my head and
Hmm.
what I believed. So growing up, I was super insecure, and I've always had this like intense anxiety and fear to speak in front of
Yeah.
people.
Hmm. Hmm.
And of course, it goes back to childhood. I remember several times in middle school, high school, where, you raise your hand and speak in front of the class and kids are laughing at you. Or I did a speech one time that was
Hmm.
videotaped and
Hmm.
I got made fun of course.
Hmm. Hmm.
And those stories, those events that stick with us,
Hmm.
we start believing whatever occurred in that event by
Yes.
saying, I must be dumb, or I must be stupid, or I can't speak
Hmm.
well, or
Hmm.
whatever, because
Yeah.
kids were making fun of me.
Mm.
And so I had all these insecurities built up over time because of all these events, and it skewed my thinking, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
my thinking became distorted, and I just had this doubt and this fear and this insecurity. But really, you have to look at it just from a different viewpoint, a different perspective. These kids weren't really making fun of me because I'm a terrible speaker. They're doing it because they're children, right?
Right.
So it's just taking these stories over time and restructuring them
Yes. Yeah.
to fit a better narrative,
Yeah.
one that can empower you. And for me, it was changing this mindset of I can't speak well, or I could never speak in front of people,
Mm.
to looking at the exceptions. When are times when I did this well, or
Mhm.
I spoke well, or someone needed to hear what I had to say? And it's just telling yourself those new stories over and over again until they become embedded in your mind
Yes.
and you start believing it about yourself. Like, this is what my reality is. This is what the truth is,
Yeah, there
not
you
what
go.
I believed when I was a child.
Yes.
Sense?
Yes. Oh, I love that. So there's an interesting perspective on that, and that is, we need to learn to separate facts from
Yes.
truth.
Yes.
And so in your situation, it is a fact that in a moment in time, you stood up and spoke and people laughed when you weren't trying to get them to laugh. You
Mhm.
weren't doing stand-up comedy. You were
Right.
doing something else and you got a
Yeah.
different result. So
Yep.
it is a fact that that occurred, but it is not true that you lacked the capacity to be a great and powerful
Correct.
speaker.
Correct.
That's
Yes.
your truth. That
Yes.
and that's the thing. So, you know, what I've learned is that thought is the first level of creation in our life.
Mhm.
It is the causative force of creation, and it is actually even influencing us at the cellular level.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And so when we have been kind of enculturated, we've been kind of conditioned with a certain idea about ourselves or about
Mhm.
others or about the world around us. And that doesn't necessarily line up with the truth
Right.
about ourselves, others, or the world around us. And we all of a sudden encounter through our one of our five senses a new idea about something.
Mhm.
You know, when that life coach suggested to you that you look at this from a different perspective, all of a sudden that was a new idea.
Yes. Yes.
And
It,
you
it, it- Go ahead.
go ahead. Well, you had to take that idea on. Now, at the moment that you encountered that new idea internally at that time,
Mhm.
you literally did not have cells of recognition.
Mhm.
In other words, that idea was not familiar to you. It was a new idea,
Right.
different idea. And that repetition that you're taking on is actually that staying in the thought long enough that all of a sudden you begin to recognize it.
Yeah.
First internally, and then you start to recognize it externally. Let me just ask you,
Mhm.
by the way, how many podcasts have you done?
47, I think.
47.
Yes.
47.
Yep.
And that's really closer to what is true about you, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I never would have put myself out there on podcast episodes, on social media, here with you right now, if
Mhm.
I hadn't worked on that mindset and changed my story and the truth about who I am. If I had continued to let the old beliefs rule who I was, then I wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing. And I think this can really apply to any area of life, any entrepreneur, anybody trying to lose weight. If we're talking about faith, any of those,
Mhm.
it all starts with your mind and
Mhm.
what you're believing, because what you believe is going to come out through your actions, and it's going to come out through your habits.
Yes.
And so to build those better habits, whether it's business or weight loss or your faith, you have to change your story. You have to
Mhm.
change your thought process so that those new habits will be consistent.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's great. And it is a process, and it's repetition. But it all starts with awareness.
Yes.
Real change begins with awareness. I was having a conversation with my best friend yesterday, and I said, what's interesting is as you become aware, where you really get to the point of you're aware of how little you actually are aware of.
That is true.
And this is not,
Yes.
I don't say that as a defeatist thing. I don't say it as it's just that you recognize that other people aren't necessarily better than you. They're just farther than you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're just more aware of where you are in this moment right now
Right.
compared to where you could potentially go.
Yeah. And I think it's actually the more you start to realize how much you don't know, it's actually an exciting thing because you're not stuck. Like you
Yeah.
have so much longer to go, but it's an exciting journey. And that's how I feel about, you know, my coaching business and
Mhm. Mhm.
nutrition and
Mhm.
fitness. Like I still don't know all there is to know. And
Yes.
that's exciting for me
Yeah.
because I love learning. I love evolving and growing. So
Yes.
I no longer look at something like that as a negative thing.
Yeah.
It's a challenge, yes,
Mhm.
but it's a good one
Yeah.
because it's challenging me to grow as a person.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Never a barrier. Okay, so I really love what you're saying here. So what are some other kind of understandings or learnings or things that you've picked up along the way that are you're helping to pass along about this mindset journey that we're on?
yeah, so the one of the biggest things that I think I've learned here recently is, and I hope you're okay with me bringing faith into this. Is this okay?
I'm
If
always
I'm
okay with people bringing faith into it.
okay. So the biggest thing about business, I think, is learning to trust trust God's timeline and not our
Mm,
own.
yeah.
And that is something that I need help overcoming, and I pray about it every single day,
Yes.
is when things don't look like the way that I think they
Yes.
should look like in
Yeah.
my business,
Mhm.
whether I'm not making the right amount of revenue or not getting the right kind of clients that I want, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Um, but just kind of trusting that this is a process. We
Yes.
have to be patient.
Mhm.
And I've just had to learn to lean on God as things don't look like the way that I think that they should.
Yes.
And that to me is empowering, because I know that I don't have to do it all on my own, if that makes sense. And I think that just lifts a lot of the pressure of having to do things in a certain time or manner, or whatever it is. I tend to stress out a lot,
Mhm.
doing 2 podcast episodes a week and then
Mm.
posting on social media every single
Mhm.
day.
Mhm.
Just so much going on, right? But if we can learn to just trust the process, do what we can do, and just learn to lean on that higher power, I think it'll help all of us.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that the entrepreneurial journey is a great way to understand that you are not alone in
Yes.
this life.
Yes.
You're not alone. And my own sort of mantra for the year that's related to what you're saying is force less and welcome more.
I love that. Yeah.
And because there it's really is about what is unfolding now. That does not mean that we do not make plans. That does not mean that we
Right.
do not have goals. That does not mean that we are not very intentional about what we do. But what I've learned is that when it's right, it is absolutely worth letting it be right and not trying to force something that's not right
Right.
be
Yep.
what it is. And uh, we just with the mastermind group that I do called the Power Plant, we recently concluded the study on the science of getting rich,
Mhm.
and wonderful, wonderful work. And one of the things that we kept saying over and over again is probably by the title, you assume this is something else. And when you get into it, you recognize that it is absolutely aligned with how the universe is created and
Mhm.
how we were created. And it talks a lot about this co-creative journey that we're on.
Yeah.
One of the great principles of that book is that we learn not to live our lives on the competitive plane and we live our lives more on the creative plane.
Right.
That is an absolutely empowering idea. If we can get in that and we can stay in that vibration, we can learn that there is absolutely no end to what can be created in our life.
Absolutely.
The need for what you do and the need for what I do, and anyone else listening, by the way, take any business. The need is not going away.
That's right.
It's not going away. And I like this idea that life is happening through us. So when you're talking about learning to wait on God's timing, I think it is that process of there's something coming through our lives and not just to our lives and not just from our lives. And, to understand that, let me just say, we have to get out of the mindset that everyone else and everything else is wrong with me.
Yeah.
And we have to put ourselves in the driver's seat of our lives as we were intended to do.
Right.
And we have to be ready to go out there and create. And I think the best way to say it is to co-create our lives. And with that, there is a harmony that begins to happen. We begin to understand ourselves more. We begin to understand our creator more. We
Mhm.
begin to understand the people we're here to serve more. And life comes through us in a way that's much more optimized. It's
Yes.
much more effective. It makes a greater impact.
Right.
And by the way, there is no limit to that impact. There is no limit to what can be created.
I
It
love
is,
that.
it is completely it is completely unlimited. And as we go along, and that's really a process of we live the truth of our lives, and we allow that to come through, and we manage the facts.
Mhm.
Someone didn't show up for a thing. We expected a higher return on this. We manage all that. But what I've learned is the people that are supposed to be there are there.
Oh yeah.
The people that you work with are the ones that you're really supposed to work with. And that scales up,
Hmm.
and it continues to go up. So I appreciate what you're saying there.
Yeah, I totally believe that. You know, God gives us divine appointments with the
Hmm.
people that we're supposed to impact,
Yeah.
and he allows things to happen in the way that they're supposed to. And as humans, we tend to want everything here and now, right?
Yeah.
We're like
Yeah.
this microwave society, but that's not how God works, and that's
Hmm.
something that I've really had to come to come to terms with, come to peace with. And I
Yes.
actually have my own life coach that I talk to on a regular basis, and
Hmm.
she's like, Jess, you have to learn that you're doing the best you can in these
Hmm.
areas.
Hmm.
And if it doesn't turn out the way that you think it is, then it doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, that's a mindset thing. I've got in my mind, okay, this is what success looks like. This is what
Hmm.
the world is saying. Um, this is the timeline that they're saying this needs to happen by, whatever it is. Even if it's not business, if it's like you want to start a family or you're wanting to start a relationship or whatever it is,
Yes.
and the world pressures us to have these goals and these timelines
Yes.
to be met, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's a lot of pressure for us.
Sure.
And just that if you'll just do what you can, you
Yes.
you plan ahead, you do the things that you need to do,
Hmm.
and then leave the rest to God. And
Yeah.
that to me has been one of the biggest things that I've had to learn.
Hmm.
And it's one of the things that helped me to overcome the fear, the anxiety, the pressure that
Mm.
comes with being an entrepreneur,
Yes.
because it's hard. It
Yes.
comes with a lot of stress, it comes with a
Hmm.
lot of anxiety,
Hmm.
a lot of, am I doing this right? Am I doing
Hmm.
enough?
Hmm.
And if we can just do what we know to do,
Hmm.
use our gifts, our skills, our abilities to the best of our ability,
Mm.
and then just trust that God will take care of the rest.
Yeah.
And I think we're good to go.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. And I think it's wonderful. And by the way, uh, what I hope people that are listening here in this is that when we're talking about God's timing and letting things happen as they're supposed to happen and
Mhm.
welcoming things, we're not talking about, lighting a bunch of candles and sitting cross-legged on the floor to just like, wish for things.
Right.
What I heard from everything that you just said is is the opposite of passivity,
Mhm.
meaning that you're not just do nothing and expect everything. It is
Right.
actually be more and more focused and intentional about how you
Intentional.
do things,
Yes.
and then you know understand that you're continually on a journey. When what I've learned, I'll just tell you what I'm learning
Sure.
is that the goals that I have are absolutely important because my mind and your mind was created to go after goals. And the more clear and specific that I can be about those goals, the better my mind will help me go get those goals.
Yes.
And guess what? The more clear my mind is on what those things are, the more clear other people's minds become, and the more I unlock them to be able to help
Right.
if they're supposed to help.
Right.
So those are important, but my understanding is that the goal is not really the goal. The goal is who you become as you move towards the goal. You become the person who is able to achieve those goals. And so it's not that I don't have goals, but my new thought about it is I'm not, those aren't necessarily, they're not my goal posts. They are not the end unto themselves. They're
Mhm.
actually mileposts
That's
on the
good.
way to a bigger expression and expansion of what God is doing through me, what is happening through me in the world
Mhm.
and through my business. And so um, again, this is not a like just wishful thinking. It's a
Yeah.
very intentional and very active process. It comes down, as we said, to having and maintaining very specific habits.
Mhm.
You hang on to the image and you stay in that. And everything that we see started as an idea.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is we're just taking an idea that's in kind of really spiritual form, we're
Mhm.
interacting with it intellectually, and we're bringing it to the world physically.
Right.
And that happens in all different kind of ways. But that process that I just described is what is the universal creative process.
Yeah. And I love that because as even in my business, when I'm helping, my clients, I'm learning almost just as much as they are. Every
Right,
time
right.
I do a podcast episode, I'm learning. I'm all these messages that I give as free content, they're for me too. I'm still learning, even from myself as I do
Absolutely.
research, as I dig into the Bible, as I dig into other podcasts and other
Hmm.
books.
Hmm.
I'm learning along the way. And I think you're right. Like the end goal is not how much money can I make and how many clients can I have? It's who am I becoming and what impact am I making
Yeah.
on these people?
Yeah. And what can I do with that?
Right.
And I love what you said. There's the best way to learn anything and to retain the most amount of information useful, to be able to make it useful in your life, is to teach it.
Right. Yes.
And that's not just an idea. That's or some internet quote from Abraham Lincoln, right?
Right.
There's actually studies. Universities have
Yes.
done studies, and what they've compared it to is what happens if I just sit and listen to a lecture. What happens if there's different levels of engagement,
Hmm. Yeah.
and by far, teaching something, it gets you up into the 90 percentile of
Right.
retention. So um, anyone who's ever taught anything is probably going, yep.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I know what
Yeah.
you're talking about.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well,
Because you're repeating it over and over, right? So
yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's getting embedded into your mind. Yeah.
yeah,
It's the
it
best way to do
does.
it.
And we can all take that principle, by the way, and we
Hmm.
can apply that. And what preparing to teach causes us to do is it causes us to enter into an observational thinking.
Hmm.
And we begin to think, what impact can this make? What exactly am I trying to get across here? What is
Right.
the point? And as we're thinking about how we're going to teach others, we're actually teaching ourselves in a way that it begins to become more salient. It makes more
Yes.
sense. We're touching it at the place where it matters. It starts to resonate with us,
Yes.
with us more. We get it in a way that we
Right.
actually didn't get it before we started going into
Hmm.
that process of preparation for teaching. So um, it's great stuff. I'm so glad, and I love hearing about your openness,
Thank
that
you.
you're learning from everything, and
Yes.
that's really the way to live, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yeah.
Well, so talk about your business specifically and what you do, and anything that we need to know or anyone needs to know about your business.
Okay, yeah. So I am an online certified fitness and sports nutrition coach.
Mm-hmm.
So, really, my drive is to help women,
Mm-hmm.
especially those who are beginning out on this journey and they
Mm-hmm.
want to lose the fat and get healthy and maybe build muscle, whatever those goals are. But really, I want to empower and educate those women who don't know anything about nutrition, who don't know anything about working out, because at one point in time, that was me.
Yes.
I did grow up working out. I love to do it. But as far as nutrition goes, um, I was, as a child, I ate nothing but frozen meals and Doritos. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that was a real big issue for me my whole life. And I got overweight. So I had this moment of unhappiness and not knowing what to do with myself. Um, and that's when I decided to get into nutrition and dig
Mm-hmm.
into the science behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I understand what it's like to be overweight. I understand what it's like to be frustrated with that. And so my goal is to educate, not just give people workouts, not just give people a meal plan. That's not what I
Mm-hmm.
do.
Mm-hmm.
I educate you on why you're working out this way, why you're eating this way. So I really just want to bust any diet myths that have been ingrained in the culture and just educate women on the proper way to eat healthy
Mm-hmm.
and to be physically active. And so all of that is online. I'm an online coach.
Mm-hmm.
So I have weekly meetings with my clients and uh, I provide them the workouts, I provide
Mm-hmm.
them videos, provide them nutrition goals, all that stuff. And then on top of that, I do have a podcast. It's
Mm-hmm.
Bridges to Barbells Radio. So that's where a lot
Mm-hmm.
of free content is. So yeah, that's what I do. I'm an online coach for women, and I love what I do.
I love that, and I certainly hope we'll, just want to offer anything that you want to share on the Leaders Fuel Daily platform. You're always welcome to do that.
Thank you.
And what we're going to make sure is that everything that you shared with us, people don't have to just remember it. They're going to have a way to connect back to it. So as people
Awesome.
see this video or listen to this podcast, that will be available there as well. And again, I just appreciate what you're doing in the world, and I know that it is making a great impact, and I know that impact is intended to increase, and it will. And it will increase. So people should know you. They should get to know you. And
Thank you.
and I'm thankful that you took the time to talk with me. Let me just make sure before we say goodbye, is there anything that we missed? Any other points that we want to share before we say goodbye?
I think we covered everything that I wanted to talk about today.
All right.
I appreciate you, Rick. Thank you so much for having me here.
Outstanding. Well, I'll say goodbye for now then.
All right. Bye for now.